Hi friends, in the video நம்ம என்ன பார்க்க போறோம்னா SA 210 which is agreeing the terms of audit engagement. What is the objective of this standard? The objective of the standard is that to accept or continue only when the following basis has been there. Okay va, first preconditions of an audit must be present. ஒரு audit accept பண்றதுக்கு முன்னாடி certain preconditions இருக்கு. Okay va, இந்த points லாம் present ஆயிருந்தா தான் the audit engagement auditor accept பண்ணலாம். Okay va, second point is that there must be a common understanding about the terms of the audit engagement. அந்த audit engagement ஓட terms பத்தி common understanding between the auditor and the management at TCWG about the terms of the audit engagement. இதெல்லாம் present ஆயிருந்தா தான் வந்து auditor வந்து audit engagement accept பண்ணலாம். First one is the preconditions for an audit. Second one is that a common understanding between the auditor and the management and TCWG about the terms of the audit engagement. About the terms of the audit engagement. Okay, first what are the preconditions for an audit? Preconditions for an audit. Now first that financial reporting framework must be acceptable. If they following AS or Ind AS, that financial reporting framework must be acceptable by the laws and regulation. Okay, financial reporting framework is acceptable and obtain the agreement of the management that it is the management responsibility for the preparation of the financial statements, and they has to design, implement and maintain the internal control that must be free from that internal control should be enabled for the preparation of the financial statements which is free from any material misstatements, that it is fraud or an error. Okay, but internal control must be properly implemented into the organization. Okay, but then to provide the auditor all information, additional information and unrestricted access to persons within the entity. Okay, but unrestricted access to persons within the entity. These are the conditions. These are the management responsibility. First point is that main point, which is the financial reporting framework is acceptable, and then it is the management responsibility for the preparation of and presentation of the financial statements, design, implementation and maintenance of the internal control, that it is to enable them to prepare the financial statements free from material misstatements, that it is free from fraud and then error. Okay, and also they has to provide the auditor with all information, additional information, unrestricted access to persons within the entity. These are the preconditions for an auditor. Okay, if the preconditions not present, in the preconditions not present na, then unless it is required by the laws and regulations, means in the laws and regulations even though it is not there, you can accept அப்படினு சொல்லிருந்தாங்க ஒளிய we should not means அது மாதிரி laws and regulations கொடுத்திருந்தாங்கன்னா நம்ம accept பண்ணிக்கலாம். But laws and regulations கொடுக்கலனா we should not accept. Okay, unless it is required by the laws and regulation, that they shall not accept the financial reporting framework, which is unacceptable. In the financial reporting framework வந்து laws and regulations படி கொடுத்திருக்காங்க, அந்த என்டிட்டிக்கு அந்த laws and regulations தான் applicable ஆகுது. அப்படிங்கும்போது நம்ம accept பண்ணிக்கலாம். But அந்த financial reporting framework unacceptable by any laws and regulation, we should not accept that financial reporting framework. Okay, so preconditions for an audit is not present in that case, or if an agreement has not been obtained. Okay, management responsibility ங்கிற agreement நம்ம வந்து obtain பண்ணல அப்படிங்கும்போது கூட நம்ம அந்த audit accept பண்ணிக்க கூடாது. Okay, unless it is required by the laws and regulation, the auditor should not accept that financial reporting framework which is unacceptable, and it is if the agreement has not been obtained. Okay, if the agreement has not been obtained. Okay, what is the limitations on the scope prior to the audit engagement acceptance? What is the limitation on the scope prior to the audit engagement acceptance? Okay, ஏதாச்சும் வந்து audit engagement நம்ம accept பண்றதுக்கு முன்னாடியே there is a limitation on the scope. Okay வா, ஒரு certain limitations வந்து அந்த organization auditor மேல impose பண்றாங்க. அப்ப என்ன பண்றது? Okay வா, auditor has to disclaim the opinion that shall not accept that audit engagement unless it is required by the laws and regulation. Okay, unless that limitation is required by the laws and regulations, they should not accept that audit engagement, because before accepting the audit engagement itself they are keeping some limitations. Limitation another, they are keeping certain restrictions while doing the for an audit. Okay, so it is before accepting the audit engagement itself. So the auditor has to do, unless it is required by the laws and regulation, they should not accept that audit engagement. Okay, then what is the contents of the agreement on terms of the audit engagement? Contents of the agreement on terms of the audit engagement. Okay, ஒரு அக்ரிமெண்ட் வந்து நம்ம வந்து அப்டைன் பண்ணோம் இல்லையா மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் கிட்டேருந்து, அதில் என்னென்ன வந்து கண்டென்ட்ஸ்லாம் இருக்கணும்? அப்ஜெக்டிவ் அண்ட் ஸ்கோப் ஆஃப் த ஆடிட், responsibilities of the auditor, responsibilities of the management, responsibility. This is a written agreement that will be entered between the auditor and the management. Okay va, adula enna points la irukonona, objective and scope, responsibilities of an auditor, responsibilities of the management, applicable financial reporting framework, reference to the expected form and content of the report which is issued by the auditor. Okay, ஒரு ரிப்போர்ட் வந்து ஆடிட் ரிப்போர்ட் வந்து இஷ்யூ பண்ணுவார் இல்லையா, அதில் என்னென்ன கண்டென்ட் இருக்கணும், இந்த ஃபார்மில் இருக்கணும் அப்படிங்கிறத எக்ஸ்பெக்டட் ஃபார்ம் அதை வந்து இதில் ப்ரொவைட் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க இந்த அக்ரிமெண்ட்டில். வாட் இஸ் தட் அப்ஜெக்டிவ் அண்ட் ஸ்கோப் ஆஃப் த அப்ஜெக்டிவ் அண்ட் ஸ்கோப், ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் த ஆடிட்டர், ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் த மேனேஜ்மெண்ட், applicable financial reporting framework, reference to the expected form and content of the report. ஓகேவா, அப்ஜெக்டிவ் அண்ட் ஸ்கோப், ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் த ஆடிட்டர், ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் த மேனேஜ்மெண்ட், applicable financial reporting framework, expected form and content of the report, expected form and content of the report. Okay, then in case of recurring audits, whether they has to issue the new engagement letter for each and every audit or not. Okay va, it's a question. Okay va, எப்போ எல்லா recurring auditsலயும் நியூவாக நம்ம engagement letter கொடுக்கணுமானா தேவையே கிடையாது. Okay va, that it is not required to issue new engagement letter at each and every recurring audits. Okay va, but certain circumstances la, in case of recurring audits also we has to issue the new engagement letter whenever there is a misunderstanding about the objective and scope. The management misunderstands the objective and scope of the audit, or if there is any revised or special terms of the audit engagement, any change in the senior management ownership, nature and size of the business, legal and regulatory requirements, financial reporting framework and other reporting requirements, legal and regulatory framework, financial reporting framework and other reporting requirements. Okay va, any indication that entity misunderstands the objective and scope, any indication that entity misunderstands the objective and scope, change in the nature and scope of the change in the terms, okay, special terms or revised terms of audit engagement, changes in the senior management ownership, nature and size of the business, and also whenever there is a change in the legal or regulatory requirements, change in the financial reporting framework, and change in other reporting requirements, change in other reporting requirements. Okay va, changes in the other reporting requirements. Next, in the mari situations they has to issue the new engagement letter in case of the recurring audits also. Okay va, acceptance of the changes in the terms of audit engagement, when they has to accept the changes in the terms of audit engagement, when the auditor has to accept the changes in the terms of the audit engagement, the auditor shall not agree to the change in the terms of the audit engagement where there is no reasonable justification for doing so. Okay, they should not ஒரு ரீசன் இருக்கணும். ஓகேவா, எதுக்காக வந்து அந்த ஆடிட் என்கேஜ்மெண்ட்டை சேஞ்ச் பண்ணுறாங்க அப்படிங்கிறதுக்கு ஒரு ரீசன் இருக்கணும். அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ரீசனபிள் ஜஸ்டிஃபிகேஷன் இல்லைனா the auditor should not accept that audit engagement. Okay, the auditor shall not agree to the changes in the terms of audit engagement when there is no reasonable justification for doing so. Okay va, okay, or if it is provides the lower level of assurance and the limitation and the changes in the terms nala, if it is provides the lower level of assurance, or whether there is no reasonable justification and determine whether there is reasonable justification for doing so. Means என்ன சொல்றாங்கன்னா, இப்போ changes in the terms of the audit engagement வந்து lower level of assurance வந்து ஆடிட்டருக்கு ப்ரொவைட் பண்ணுதுன்னா, அது அந்த சேஞ்சஸ் இந்த டேர்ம்ஸ்க்கு ப்ராப்பரான ரீசன் இருக்கா அப்படிங்கிறத ஆடிட்டர் வந்து செக் பண்ணணும். ஓகேவா, unless it is a proper reasonable justification, they shall not accept the changes in the terms of the audit engagement. Okay, the auditor shall not accept the changes in the terms of audit engagement unless there is no reasonable justification. Unless there is no reasonable justification, however, no reasonable justification if it provides a lower level of assurance. But if it provides a lower level of assurance, there must be proper reasonable justification for doing so. If there is no reasonable justification, they shall not accept that audit engagement. Okay, they shall not accept the audit engagement. They shall not accept that changes in the terms of the audit engagement. Okay, if the terms are changed, auditor and management agree on and record the new terms of engagement in engagement letter or other suitable form of written agreement. If the terms are changed, auditor and management agree on and record the new terms of engagement letter. Okay, if it is changed, they has to enter into the new terms of engagement in the engagement letter. If the auditor is unable to agree and it is not permitted by the management to continue also, auditor the changes in the terms agree பண்ண முடியல, management வந்து not they are not permitting the auditor to continue the engagement. அப்போ என்ன பண்ணா, the auditor has to withdraw from the engagement and determine any obligations to report to the legal or regulatory authorities. ஓகேவா, அவங்க கிட்ட TCWG owners regulatorsக்கு அவங்க inform பண்ணிட்டு they can withdraw that. ஓகேவா, withdraw from the engagement. It means the auditor also not agreeing and management also not permitting to continue the audit engagement, then withdraw from the engagement. Okay, then financial reporting framework prescribed by the laws or regulation other matters of affecting the acceptance. Means in the financial reporting framework normally unacceptable, but it is required by the laws and regulation. அதுக்காக அவங்க அக்செப்ட் பண்ணிக்கிறாங்க அந்த ஆடிட்டர். அப்படிங்கும் போது என்னென்ன அடிஷ்னல் ரெஸ்பான்சிபிலிட்டிஸ் இருக்குது அப்படிங்கிறத பார்க்கலாம். ஓகேவா, இஃப் த ஃபினான்ஷியல் ரிப்போர்ட்டிங் ஃப்ரேம்வொர்க் prescribed by the laws and regulation would be unacceptable, but for the fact it is prescribed in the laws and regulation, the auditor shall accept the audit engagement only if the following conditions are present. The management has to agree to provide the additional disclosures in the financial statements. The management has to provide the certain additional disclosures in the financial statements itself, and then terms of the audit engagement should provide that the auditor will include the emphasis of matter paragraph to draw the attention of the users of financial statements about the financial reporting framework as per SA 706. The auditor will include in the auditor's report the emphasis of matter paragraph, and then they should not include the phrase true and fair view should not be given. Okay, they should not include the such phrases like give you true and fair view, presented fairly in all material respects. அது மாதிரி எந்த ஒரு ஃப்ரேஸுமே வந்து இன்க்ளூட் பண்ணக்கூடாது. ஓகேவா, financial reporting framework. Okay, financial reporting framework, if it is unacceptable but it is required by the laws and regulation, only if the additional conditions are present they can accept that financial reporting framework. So first point is that the management has to provide the additional disclosures in the financial statements. So additional disclosures in the financial statements, and also the auditor also has to include in the auditor's report that emphasis of matter paragraph as per SA 706, as per SA 706, and also they should not include the phrases like presented fairly in all material respects, give you true and fair view, like that phrases should not be included. Okay, if the above conditions not present and auditor required by the laws and regulation to undertake the audit engagement, he shall evaluate the effect of misleading nature of the financial statements or the auditor's report and include the appropriate reference to this matter in terms of audit engagement. If the above conditions are not present and auditors required by the laws and regulation has to undertake the audit engagement, he shall evaluate the effect of the misleading nature of the financial statements on the auditor's report. Okay, இந்த கண்டிஷன்ஸ்லாம் ப்ரெசென்ட் ஆகலை. ஓகேவா, எம்பசிஸ் ஆஃப் மேட்டர் பேராகிராஃப் இன்க்ளூட் பண்ணல, இல்லை அடிஷ்னல் டிஸ்க்ளோஷர்ஸ் மேனேஜ்மெண்ட் ப்ரொவைட் பண்ணலனா வாட் இஸ் த எஃபெக்ட் ஆஃப் த மிஸ்லீடிங் நேச்சர் ஆஃப் த ஃபைனான்ஷியல் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ஸ் அண்ட் இன்க்ளூட் த அப்ரோப்ரியேட் ரெஃபரன்ஸ் டு திஸ் மேட்டர் இன் த டேர்ம்ஸ் ஆஃப் த audit engagement. We has to include the reference to this matter in audit engagement itself. Okay, the auditor can still accept, but he has to evaluate what is the effect of the misleading nature of the financial statements and provide the appropriate reference in the audit engagement itself. Okay, next, factors that are relevant for the auditor's determination of the acceptability of the financial reporting framework to be applied in the preparation of the financial statements. Okay, financial reporting framework நம்ம அக்செப்ட் பண்ணலாமா, இது அக்செப்டபிளா இல்லையா அப்படிங்கிறத எப்படி வந்து ஆடிட்டர் தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம்னா, பேஸ்ட் ஆன் த நேச்சர் ஆஃப் த என்டிட்டி, பர்பஸ் ஆஃப் த ஃபைனான்ஷியல் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ஸ், நேச்சர் ஆஃப் த ஃபைனான்ஷியல் ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்ஸ், லாஸ் அண்ட் ரெகுலேஷன்ஸ், prescribes the financial reporting framework. Okay, and the financial reporting framework வந்து அந்த என்டிட்டிக்கு applicable அப்படிங்கிறத பார்க்குறதுக்கு the nature of the entity, what is the nature of the entity, the purpose of the financial statements, the nature of the financial statements and the laws and regulation. The nature of the entity, purpose of the financial statements, nature of the financial statements, laws and regulation prescribes the financial reporting framework. Based on the nature of entity, purpose of the financial statements, nature of the financial statements, prescribed laws and regulations. Okay, audit of the components. While we are doing the audit of the components, we have to examine these matters when the auditor of the parent entity, also the auditor of the component, factors that may influence the decisions whether to send the separate audit engagement letter to the component include the following: who appoints the component auditor, whether a separate audit report is to be issued to the component, what is the legal requirements, degree of ownership by the parent, degree of independence of the component management. இதெல்லாம் பேஸ் பண்ணி நம்ம செப்பரேட்டாக ஆடிட் ரிப்போர்ட் என்கேஜ்மெண்ட் லெட்டர், செப்பரேட் ஆடிட் என்கேஜ்மெண்ட் லெட்டர்ஸ் மீன்ஸ் பேரண்ட் என்டிட்டியோட ஆடிட்டர் தான் காம்போனண்ட்டுக்குமே ஆடிட்டர். ஓகேவா? அப்படி இருக்கும்போது நம்ம வந்து ஒரு புது என்கேஜ்மெண்ட் லெட்டர் வந்து நம்ம காம்போனண்ட்டுக்கு கொடுக்கணுமா இல்லையா அப்படிங்கிறத எந்த ஃபேக்டர்ஸ்லாம் வச்சு டிட்டர்மைன் பண்ணணும்னா, who appoints the component auditor, whether separate audit report we are going to issue for that. ஓகேவா? legal requirements, what is the degree of ownership and what is the degree of independence. Okay, degree of ownership, degree of independence, legal requirements, who appoints that component auditor, and a separate audit report whether it has to be issued. Based on that they has to determine whether the new engagement letter has to be issued. Okay, whether the new engagement letter or separate audit engagement letter has to be issued to the component or not. Okay, this is all about SA 210, agreeing the terms of audit engagement. Thank you.